So how did you become a non-feminist woman?
I think it ties down to my childhood perspective of a man, that I was raised with a lot of cousins, I was raised with a lot of male friends, and the feminism side that my female friends did, it didn't really touch me. But personally, I wasn't really into that exposing the higher power for the women. And I feel like everyone was equal. Like, I felt good with conversing both with men and women, but I didn't felt like need for the higher energy of men or higher energy of women. For me, everyone was equal, everyone was coexisting, but the more I grew up, the more disparity I saw. So I ended up searching for groups that was related to gender disparity and overall having this equal balance between men and women. I found some and the the women against feminism as well, and that concept really spoke to me a lot. For me, the concept even of patriarchy, for me, it exists. It's unbearable for both women and men. And now we can see this extremist side that only women are raising their voices while men tends to keep it low. And in my opinion, this shouldn't be only one side fighting. We should both have the strong power to fight, both in all sectors, political, healthcare, well-being. It's our society. It's not only women's society or men's society.
Okay. So the next question is, do you believe in the West that we live in a patriarchy? So you said yes. How do you view the word patriarchy? Do you believe that we live in a patriarchy?
I think it still exists. Maybe it's not as noticeable as in previous years because it due to a lot of social norms that came right now, which is, for example, LGBTQ laws that give you this perspective that if you spoke badly about someone, you may be homophobe, you can be misogynistic, you can be anti-feminism. I think it really bolts into people, especially companies. If they're called an insult like this, they retrieve themselves back. But in the private sector, when you're working them with day-to-day basis, it still exists. And you can feel it a lot.
Okay. And what are your thoughts on traditional gender roles?
For me, it also depends. Because for me, traditional gender roles were set back as a male, as a home provider, the money provider, and the woman as a home taking care of. But in recent years, as I was traveling a lot, for me, it doesn't exist. Like, you can be a woman who provides for the home, you can be a man who provides for the home. They can be both taking care of the financial and also the well-being side while cooperating. It's totally good to go. Like, you can make it happen, but you have to have the will.
So you would say we don't need traditional gender roles?
I think it's a standard, a pattern that was created for the society. And also was extracted from some part of the history. And if we look more in the history books, even those when we read at school, we can see that even tribes have different roles. But at the end, everyone is doing the same. Even when we see, let's give it an example. In Amazonia, they have a tribes that women are also hunting with men. And they're providing food. And also we have men who are better at cooking. So I think it's only a pattern that was put into society just to stand their lives.
Okay, but where do you think this pattern comes from? Do you think it has anything to do with biology, or was it just random? How did we end up with this pattern? Do you think it was related to biology? Do you think, for example, many feminists would say that this pattern arose in a sense out of misogyny and so on, that we tied women down, and that was, it was a misogynistic pattern and it was unfair to women. Where do you think this pattern came from?
I think okay, in the very early stages we could see that the gender roles were clear in our European society that we saw. It was clearly stated because of the strength of a woman, because of strength of the man. It was more clearly guided along.
Right.
But also I would say it depends on the country, because there's a lot of countries that have different cultural systems, and it doesn't always set aside to the biology, but the environment you grow up with.
Right.
So I wouldn't say it's something that negatively impacts you, but it's something that sets your role in the society. So if you have more strength, if you have more capabilities to do something, you are set to this role that fits into you, and you're accepted.
Okay.
That's how I would put it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we all have different opinions on it. It's interesting. I agree with you that it doesn't have to be. It of course it's tradition. It comes from society, but I tend to think that in the past it came from biological things, like the fact that women had to breastfeed children, so that meant they must have been closer to the children. And I think there's definitely, in my opinion, a biological basis for how these gender roles were defined. And nowadays, as we have moved a bit further from biology, I think that has freed us to do many things outside of the typical gender roles. And, that's why, I think in history, there's always been flexibility, of course. If if gender roles don't work for your situation, humans are adaptable, we are clever, we are, we're not rigid people that don't observe our surroundings and situations. So if it doesn't work for your situation, you will adapt and you will do whatever it takes to survive. So yes, of course, men are able to do what women would have done if needed. And women are able to do what men would have done if needed, and if that is what works for survival. And I'm sure that happened many times throughout history and in many cultures. But I think that the reason you see these traditional gender roles in so many cultures throughout the world, from India to China to European culture to Native American culture, and within African cultures, you see similar structures. It is for reasons. Now, of course, within that, there's a huge amount of diversity, as you said. But what I mean by similar structures is that generally we see that the children stay closer to the mother in whatever capacity that she does, and the men stay more focused on providing and stuff like this. So, but okay. So the next question.
I would strongly agree with what you said overall. I strongly agree with it, that with the pattern that we see, the women are more home providing. And when we look at the biology of raising children, getting pregnant, getting more, taking care of your environment, I once saw it in a book that they compared to a bird keeping the nest and putting and creating and growing the environment. You set the ground for the children. I would strongly agree with it, that we have the same capacities. And as a women in society, we tend to create a safe environment for the latest generations. So yes, I would strongly agree with your opinion about the biological sources as a woman who is provider.
Who takes care of children, in a sense.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. What are your thoughts on men's rights activists?
I would say from one point they are right. If it's not the toxic part of strongness,
Mhm.
because we can see it also in the feminist side, that if you took it too far, then it becomes toxic, and you become like this outcast in the society, that you want too much out of something you try to fight for. If we talk about the men's right activists, I think they're fighting for the right thing, but sometimes the words are not well structured. I know that there's a lot of lone fathers out there that really tries to put the ends together and create the same environment that women tends to do, but because of many reasons they cannot, and they want to fight for a better life for the children. Because when you have a child, it's mostly you have two parents. You have mom that is providing the feminine side, and the male, the dad, that is providing the more masculine side. And he is teaching about the strongness, the power, the protection. And the woman is teaching about this safe environment and how to take care of yourself. So if there is not one side, but the masculine side that, well, the men are trying to fight for, I think they have the right to fight for their own good, and to provide for their children, and to provide more for the men to take care of their children as the mothers would, but to not take it to excessivity.
Okay. Okay. What would you say about hypergamy? Do you think that women choose men based on how much money they have, or based on their social standard? How do you think women choose men?
I think it also comes down to what we talked about biological pattern of what women do and what men do. It's also the selective biological prior to see, okay, if the male is strong enough, if he's taller than me, if his overall personal view is having this protected shelter, I can choose him. So automatically I would say that yes, women tend to choose men based on the financial structure, about the appearance, because that's what animals also do. They look for the strongest from the most important men to choose and to reproduce with. So it's a biological structure that we follow.
Okay. And how do you think men choose women?
I think it also ties down to the biological pattern. They look for women that have the features, the skills to provide, to create shelter, to create the safe environment, as well as I would say it's a familiar trait that they choose to take the more feminine women into the account. If, well, there was a study about it, that men who lose their mother, they tend to take more feminine women that take care of the home, that take care of the whole environment, and those who lose their father, they tend to take more masculine type.
Okay.
To have this protected shelter.
Okay.
And someone who provides for them.
Okay. Okay. What are your thoughts on anti-feminist women being called pick-me girls?
I think it's something that really annoys me, because like putting a label on someone, no matter who it is and whose views you have, is wrong for me. We shouldn't stigmatize people, and we shouldn't call names people, because either way, if you have your views, like being anti-feminism is okay, and being feminism is also okay, but calling names and going into this war zone, as I like to call it, it's not something that we should have. We should have debates. We should talk about it. We should have a dialogue, and we should have the right to fight
Yeah.
or what we think is
Right.
good.
Yeah, because different
And
people are going to think different things. And
yes,
I think we are like the sort of cancel culture and thing. If you are an anti-feminist and say, "Oh my gosh, you should never be a feminist," whatever, and you don't talk to each other, then there's no way for minds to change. There's no way to make. If you believe in what you believe, then you should be willing to talk to the other person.
yes.
Yeah. So, but go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
you summed up my thoughts exactly. That we should have this area to talk, because it's good that you have opposite thoughts, and it's very good that you want to talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
But don't throw hands, don't throw labels
Mm-hmm.
at someone who has different point of view than you.
Mm-hmm.
Because at some point in your life, maybe you will realize that this person gave you more thought and
Mm-hmm.
maybe change your life for the better.
Mm-hmm. And otherwise, you also just ask people to lie, to not say
Yeah.
what they think, because yeah. So okay, so the last question is like, if you have to summarize your general views on feminism, just in general, if you speak from the heart on feminism, what are your views on feminism?
If honestly, I know that feminism right now is exceed. It's obstructive.
Mm-hmm.
For me, feminism who was back then, who was fighting for both rights, for
Mm-hmm.
both genders, and to have the equal rights,
Mm-hmm.
is something that I strongly agreed with.
Mm-hmm.
But right now, feminism is just exceeding the limits of the debates. They don't talk anymore. They're yelling at people
Mm-hmm.
instead of talking and debating and giving another point of view.
Mm-hmm. And what would you change about feminism to make it better, if you could change something?
Debates. I think the both sides having this area to talk,
Mm-hmm.
to give analyses from it, and to think back what could change for another people.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yes.
What do you think about male reproductive rights? Do you think that men should have the right to give up fatherhood?
I don't know if I'm the right person to state this opinion with, because having male reproductive rights is something that male should speak upon on. And if they want to give up the rights, they should.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's the same as the abortion law and the rights to reproduce for women.
Mm-hmm.
Women should speak about it, and women should decide if they want to give it up or not.
Mm-hmm.
I think it ties down more to the gender. If the male should speak about it because they have more expertise, if they want to give it up or not. As well as women should talk about the abortion and the feminine reproductive rights.
Okay. But in general, I think many men would say they would like the choice to not be a father if someone gets pregnant for them.
Pretty tough question, because I can see a lot of scenarios from it. And from one point, if it's a child from the rape, and the male did it for his own advantage, I think the child support and supporting the child would be rightfully argumented. But if it would be, let's say, a surprise from one night stand, and the male didn't intend to do it and he had protection, I think he should have rights to do it. But I would say it depends on the case.
Okay. Do you have a story of anybody in your life who has been affected by feminism? Do you know anybody who's been affected by anything related to feminism?
I would say that I personally have, since, well, I said that I have a lot of male friends, and I would say this was the one time, very young, like 17, 16, when we tried to protect our friend from a feminist that tried to get him on the bad side. He had done her wrong. He apologized. It was an accident on the road. But since the woman was so strongly perceived that it's his fault because he was doing it on purpose, we tried to talk her down that it wasn't on purpose. He has his issues. He has his mental issues. He had prescribed meds. She still was going on. And yeah, the case went up into the court. My friend obviously wasn't charged. He was set free. But still, the talk to my friend, he was male, he was young, he had a lot of problems. Talking like this to a very young male, being older than himself, is really setting the mind on a woman's perspective later on. He was having a lot of problems later on with the relationships, with even talking with the women later on. So I think, yeah, it can impact a lot how you talk and how you put your views on other people.
So what did she say to him, for example?
She was saying that it's his fault that he was driving like a madman, that he should take care of his masculinity, he shouldn't raise his ego, he shouldn't raise his privilege, that he was the one that caused the accident, but at the end we've seen that it was her fault because of the camera that we had. So yeah, something like this.
Okay.